what I felt like when I was watching these vampires, because they weren't like hindered, right? They weren't this like creepy other. They were really cool.
They're like the coolest, most fashionable vampires I've ever witnessed. And I was like, the fashion was honestly like outside of even just the story. Like the story was my favorite part, but the fashion was on point. I was like, these are the most fashionable humans. I want to be this cool. Hi, I'm Kat.
And I'm Gabe.
And
we're the Ghouls Next Door. Talk about spooky stuff.
You know, as we do, man.
Yes. And this is a special episode. We are going to be talking to a very special guest about a film that we watched for Salem Horror Fest.
Yeah. It was a really, really great film. Just really fun and like on the nose and just doing great stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And it was the kind of film that we are always striving to have, where you're telling something, you're also very entertaining and super fun in all the ways that they can be. And so we're going to invite special guest, Alice Maio Mackay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. This is honestly like a treat. Just like your film was really refreshing, I would say. Like it was a nice, I think Salem Horror Fest just has had a lot of really great films that have like meaningful messages and also just like are diverse and interesting stories that we just don't see in mainstream all the time, unfortunately. So it's like, it's honestly awesome. So it's really great to see work like yours. When my initial draw to it was that we had seen the film Bit, which was, with vampires and also it has like trans characters and lesbians and all kinds of cool queer fun. And it kind of fell through at the end for us. So we were like, okay, like let's go in and let's see if, this, redeems that kind of plot. And it did. Like it's so much better. Thinking about like how much money and how much like publicity that film gets versus like how awesome this one is. I was like, oh, this is such a shame. More people need to be watching this. So it's awesome. And what we're talking about is So Vam. So Kat, do you want to tell us what So Vam is about?
Yes. This is from IMDb. Kurt is an outcast in a conservative town who dreams of moving to the city to be a famous drag queen. When he is kidnapped by a predatory old vampire and killed, he is rescued just in time to be resurrected by a gang of rebellious vampires who feed on the bigots and abusers.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's dope.
Yes, we wanted to kind of start with, like, how did you come up with the idea for this? Like, where did it start?
Well, I started I did a short film, I think last year called Tooth to Tooth, which was vampires, queer, like political. But then I think I did another short film after that, and then I wanted to kind of go into a feature next. And I mean, vampires is one of my favorite subgenres of horror. So then, I love drag as well, and I wanted to do something. Originally, I wanted to do a drama, but just with the resources I had, I thought, I loved horror, and I thought that was going to be achievable with everything, the budget. So I knew I wanted to do like a coming of age story that had like a lot of queer leading characters as well as supporting queer characters. And then, I don't know, I just kind of came up with a story and then went from there. But I knew I wanted to tell a message with my film, but also have that kind of, fun vampire, romance as well, and kind of everything I wanted in one film to just be, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And that definitely comes through because it's like there are horror aspects, but it's kind of campy and fun in that way. So it's definitely like more digestible for people who might not be super in love with horror and that might be reluctant to jump in. Like you could still very much enjoy yourself and not be put off by like it being like too horror or like
too
grotesque.
gory.
It's like fun instead. And and there's the of super fun like friendship. There's like platonic relationships in there, and then romantic ones as well. Yeah, Kat, your question.
Yeah. What got you into filmmaking and writing? I read another article where they talk about like how you're so young, but doing all these amazing things. So like, what has gotten you into filmmaking and writing? And then like, what is your creative process like? And yeah, like, how'd you get here?
Well, I always like wanted to be like a novelist, like writer when I was younger, and I did like short story competitions. And then I don't know, when I was about 12, I was like really into film somehow. I was just kind of like, oh, I could see my short ideas more like film like instead of just prose. And then I don't know, I just started doing some stop motion animations by myself, and then I started getting actors involved in animations, and then I got the rights to a Stephen King story, which kind of was pretty cool with the Dollar Baby project. So then I don't know, that was my first live action kind of thing. And then that kind of helped everything to get here, I guess. And like my writing process, so I have a co-writer, Ben Paul Robinson, who I do a lot of or most of my work with. And so for this one, I came up with the idea, I wrote the opening in like a narrative kind of style and had an outline for the rest. And then we just kind of went back and forth.
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
so cool. Yeah, I've heard of the Stephen King where you can he really loves for people to just like have access to his work, and I think that has kind of opened the door for some really interesting projects, because it's like he puts in all that work to make this amazing story, and then other people's minds can kind of like blend them and twist them. So that's super cool that you got to do that. Like, that's awesome. Like, I love that. I wanted to know what it was like. So there's in this story, like we have Kurt, and he aspires to be a drag queen, and there's a lot of fun like playing with like, what name am I gonna have, and you see like their sketches and all of that. And I wanted to know what it was like working with like professional drag performers during the shoot.
It was pretty amazing. So I mean, all the sketches and stuff you see, they did that themselves, and they designed like the final outfit and everything as well. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty fun. I think they had a good time as well because it was their first acting role as well. Because I approached them to audition for the role, and I think there are a couple of other drag people in there as well. And I mean, it was kind of like two worlds collide because I've always loved the drag scene, and then getting to do that with the film and the story was pretty exciting.
Yeah, they were amazing. They were like so natural and really helped like set that tone. And like the fact that like we're introduced to them right away, and there's this like kind of like hero aspect to them, and there's also this kind of fantasy as well, like because some of them are like, wait, is this like a magical person? And honestly, like drag performances are magical when you're there. And I just really loved like the lighting, and it really does feel like you're at a drag performance, and doesn't take away from the story too. It just feels like now we're setting the tone. We're seeing why that's an aspiration for Kurt. And I will say the beginning is so abrupt in kind of dropping us into the realities and some of the traumas that we're going to explore throughout the whole film. And I found that very interesting to kind of just like jump into that. So we like I was saying before, we really love films that are striving to have this message, and to use fear and horror as a way for people to kind of like experience and live different lifestyles and issues that they probably wouldn't have otherwise had. And so one of our questions is just like, what do you hope this film's impact is for those who watch it? Like, what do you want people to leave with after they've watched this film?
Well, when I wrote it, I really wanted it to be for queer people, because there are a lot of like films that have queer characters and like for straight audiences or like toned down. So I really wanted to encapsulate like the queer experience, and especially like the vampires, the like chosen family. I really want, I mean, especially for trans people and like non-binary people, to be like felt seen in the film, and especially in like the genre film as well. I think for like non-queer audience members, I don't know, it's just kind of exploring that world, I guess, and kind of seeing through different perspective of how, I don't know, high school might be different, or how their family lives might be different, and kind of their troubles as well. But it's also like there's joy in their queerness, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was really cool, specifically like specifically on our show, we talk a lot about how like monsters represent different things within our society, and how like using monsters within horror is like a great tool for like kind of anyone who feels othered. And there's a line in the film where they discuss the way vampires have been like used in media to represent different things. And I just thought it was so cool and just on the nose. And I feel like there's lots of times where people will like ingest media and not realize like, wow, yeah, no, vampires have been meaning this for a while, or like the whole thing about Bram Stoker. I was like, that's so dope. But
yeah, I was like looking it up.
I was like, oh my God, that's true.
I was like, I didn't know that.
But what made you want to make like a vampire film specifically? Like, how did you develop your lore? I liked like when they were going through like, we actually don't live forever. Like we die, like how did you come up with that?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've always been like obsessed with kind of every kind of vampire film, like Vampire Academy, Twilight, True Blood, anything and everything. And like when, I don't really know, developing like the laws and stuff, I guess we just kind of combine the aspects that would make it fun to be in the vampire world, but not so like the fun stuff, because then we can like have none of that camp stuff or the outside scene. So I guess it was just kind of combining everything we loved and, getting rid of some of the cliches and keeping some of them to make something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it felt like being a vampire wasn't debilitating, right? It wasn't this like kind of takeaway and like, you have to suffer, right? It was like, no, you're just a little different. And if anything, you're like special now, right? Like you are more empowered. You feel like you're kind of accepting yourself, which is an easier kind of explanation into that world of like just coming to terms with your own identity. And that's just what I felt like when I was watching these vampires, because they weren't like hindered, right? They weren't this like creepy other. They were really cool.
They're like the coolest, most fashionable vampires I've ever witnessed. And I was like, the fashion was honestly like outside of even just the story, like the story was my favorite part, but the fashion was on point. I was like, these are the most fashionable humans. I want to be this cool. And I just feel like hopefully anyone who's seeing it is like, especially like non-binary and trans, like they feel like, wow, that's me on the screen. And also I'm fashionable as hell.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to know like what the process was for like finding these actors and working with them, and also like a bit about like the crew. Where did you have like queer or like what does your crew look like as well, like behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera?
So with actors, as I mentioned with I messaged them prior to like finishing the first draft, and then with April, I mean, that was one of the hardest characters to cast because originally I was going to fly someone down from Sydney who was in like an acting school, but then they couldn't make it work because of COVID and lockdown. So then like a friend of a trans actor knew someone who was interested in acting. They'd done like modeling and some TikTok stuff, and I was like, I didn't really have many other options. So I was like, do you want to audition? And then they were just like perfect for the role. So that's how I found them. And then everyone else just kind of auditioned or I'd worked with before, especially like the older, not teenage, supposed to be actors like the father and the comic book person. And then like even with the performers at the start, when you see Kurt watching them, that was like one of the original Legos. I'm not sure if you know who they are in America, but it was like King's Cross in Sydney, like the first kind of trans performers on TV and stuff like that as well. So that was really incredible working with them. And for crew, so I was originally going to co-produce it with someone else, but then they were going interstate and couldn't make it work. So I was like, oh, okay. So I took on producing as well, full of that, which was intense. But yeah, as I said, I worked with my co-writer and then I directed it. And then the first AD was also the woman in the comic book store who talked about Bram Stoker and that. So she was my first AD. And then really, we had 3 camera operators. So Aaron Chupan was the main DOP, and then he brought along Rebecca Dunker, who shot my Stephen King film as B-Cam, and then Beck Taylor, she was also another camera just because we shot like 7 days, so we needed as many cameras as possible. And yeah, then the costumes and production, that was all done by Eliza, and then 2 makeup artists who they were both amazing. And yeah, so mix of diversity, I think, on and off.
That's really cool. And you could really see that like coming through, like there's when you have like a small tight crew like that are just as passionate about like the script, it really comes through in the finished project. It's almost like you're like a family in that way. And like, especially when you're doing like multiple roles, you're wearing multiple hats, like you just get really invested in what you're working with. So that's so cool.
Yeah. What kind of stories, like, obviously you got a long and bright career ahead of you. So like, is there anything you have like in your mind for the future? Any projects you're working on right now, or kind of like just like dreams of what is to come?
I mean, there's definitely been a couple of ideas been trying to get down, and it's just restrictions, budgets, and COVID and everything at the moment. But I'm writing a new feature with the same co-writer, which I want to shoot next year, fingers crossed. But that's more of like a Rob Zombie slasher kind of thing, but with like a queer kind of like non-binary final girl kind of take on that whole thing. Yeah.
That
really sounds
cool.
Awesome.
What are
I'm
like
so excited.
yeah. I'm like, yeah, more.
I want to see it.
Yeah, like what are some of like your influences when you're really like thinking of these films? Like, are you like, I mean, you've kind of already said it a little bit, but like, are you intentionally trying to subvert certain messaging, or is it just like, these are the stories that matter to me, so I'm going to tell them because this is all that like I care about? Or is it like, I want people to see this very specific story? Like, yeah. So like, what are, some of your inspirations for that? Like all the work that you do?
Yeah, I think I just want to tell the stories that are important to me, and like obviously they're not a lot with like trans and queer people, but some of the like stylistic influences like Sean Waters, like Greg Araki, and I really wanted to do that kind of meets almost like the Rob Zombie aesthetic, with like more pop. I really loved like the Craft Legacy and all those kind of films as well. I mean, a bit controversial, but like the Black Christmas 2019, I haven't seen it for a while, but I enjoyed it back then and really liked the messaging and combination of horror. I mean, I know it's not perfect, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. Would you say that you're like a horror fan, just like even just outside of like creating it? Like, are those the kinds of films that you enjoy to watch?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like became a horror fan like unintentionally, especially with the Stephen King. Like I hadn't really watched a lot of horror, like Monsters and Scooby-Doo was kind of it. But then as like I made more horror films, I was like, they're actually really good, and that's pretty much what I watch majority now. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets you, right? Like you do it once and you're like, wait, this is actually pretty exciting. Like it's like a adrenaline rush that you're just gonna like keep looking for.
I guess like this process, you talked a little bit about like the challenges and like the successes, and like creating a film in COVID. That's a big challenge. And like, was there anything that was like, how you said you filmed this in 7 days too? Is that correct?
Yeah, the bulk was like 7 days. Yeah.
Like what were kind of the biggest challenges / also like the little wins, like the little things that you like celebrate? You're like, oh, that was so great. Or yeah, like what was the process like in terms of managing all of the stress of filming within a pandemic and also trying to like get people around? And yeah, like what like really worked or like lended well to even this like new kind of way of having to operate within the world?
Well, pandemic wise, the only issue, like, I mean, aside from flying in the actor, it was pretty fine because in Australia we don't, I mean, well, now we do, but back in the start we didn't have any cases or restrictions in Adelaide, like 0 cases and everything. So that was pretty fine. I mean, the stress, like it was stressful. I didn't really think about it till afterwards though.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like I didn't feel that stressed on the shoot. Like it was pretty smooth sailing. I mean, having 3 camera operators, like a DP who was like super experienced, and I'd worked with a lot of mostly everyone before, so that was kind of good. I think, like, I mean, the wins, I got to work with like Kobe from Drag Race, which was super cool, and like some of the cast was just, that was pretty amazing. And yeah, I mean, I don't think it was anything too stressful. I think the day when we were shooting in the Lair, because we did all the Lair stuff in one day, I think we almost got like kicked out because they had a concert and then we were running late. So we were actually going to do the fight scene outside, like in an alleyway. But then we were like, oh, we can get it done in like 40 minutes. So yeah, I don't know. That was probably the biggest stress.
Yeah, I feel that. I've done that where you're like, all right, what can we do? What can go? What can stay? How do we do this as quick and still good as possible? Yeah, there's a lot of like direction and like like aesthetic that goes into this that I really enjoy. Like there's the intentional lighting, like of the purple and the green, and it's just like kind of pop and fun, and the different like color grading, which kind of makes it almost seem like it's modern, but then it also at times felt like it could exist at any time, like which is like really cool to see. Like there obviously are modern things with like phones or just like the way that people say and do things, but I thought that was really cool. And there's also like the music, which I
Yeah, the music
really
was
enjoyed. So I wanted to know more about like how you found like the certain songs that kind of play through, and what that process was like for you.
So like the score, I found him through Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, that documentary. And then the actual songs used throughout, just like people I know, like mainly queer and trans artists. So like we got Corey Liner, she's a trans musician who did one of the drag songs, and Alex Zone did the credit song, and then Alter Boy, an Australian trans band, did a couple of songs. So that was like really important as well, because I was like, well, if we're going to have like a cis male composer who did an amazing job, but I really wanted to have that balance of also queer musicians and highlighting them, because, you know, otherwise it's like,
yeah. That's so cool. Yeah, it definitely comes through. Because I was like, wow, this song is like so fun. I was like, this has to be intentional. And I love that. I love that there's like so many levels of just like making sure that there's like we're holding space and being intentional. Because, you know, there's often times where people are, you know, telling certain stories and we kind of miss out on what they could fully be, because we don't have the right people who are behind the camera or the right people who are like doing this or that. And it's like, it's so nice to have this range and that everyone kind of is contributing to make sure that the story is covering all the bases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing you said that really resonated with me is that a lot of times we'll have films that are like watered down specifically to be geared towards straight audiences. And it was like really cool to see that not taking place. Are there any other like people who make films or other films that you've seen that have done this really well, like in that like you feel like authentically seen and heard, either it's something that you're going to be creating in the future or people that you've already seen do it that like kind of, I don't know, like inspire you to keep making it happen?
I think, I mean, when I saw the Craft Legacy, I mean, not that the trans character was like, you know, main, but I think what was important was like when I read the interviews, they actually had like pre-production and stuff where they were learning like about the trans identity and kind of giving like cast and crew rundown of like what to say, like teaching about, because I think that's important as well. So a lot of times you might see a film and, you know, the backstory is like really awful, they treated their trans cast awful and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool and inspiring. I mean, I don't know. I'm like the new Chucky. I think that's pretty cool to have a gay character as lead. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna like check because I have like a list.
Oh yay! Yeah, it's good because we can plug that to like our listeners to be like, watch these. Yeah.
I saw another interview. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I really liked. I don't know if this is horror. It's kind of grindhouse. I think it's getting absolutely canned. Habit with by Janelle Shirtcliffe with Bella Thorne. That has like a trans lead character, and I think that's really done well because they're not like exploiting the trans experience, but she's just there as a trans person, and I think that's really important as well to have that, especially when it's written by a cis woman. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's about. I don't know. There's not a lot. Yeah. I mean, I really like John Waters' Gogoraki, that kind of stuff. That's not really horror. That's more sci-fi, camp kind of stuff.
Yeah, I read another thing you were talking about. You mentioned a few films in an article. I don't know. I don't remember what it was. I think it was pop horror. But you had mentioned Assassination Nation, which we love. And I got really excited about. And then Bit, obviously, which we loved outside of the last 10 minutes. And then, so it was cool. That's all.
Yes, I had a question, and then I was like, I just got so excited as I was listening, and then I totally lost it. So maybe it'll come back. But in the meantime, like what are some like words of advice for, other like burgeoning filmmakers who might be like similar in age or who are just starting out also, because it could be like, you could be any age starting out making a film and specifically making films that cover some really like sensitive topics. Like what's some advice that you would give to someone?
I mean, with the sensitive topics, I'd say like just do it authentically. Like I can never write, I don't know, like I really annoys me when it's not, someone's not well educated on the topic they're writing about. I think what made Bit work so well, I mean, I know you did like last 10 minutes, but was that he did his research. Like he had a trans consultant, his name was like Craft Legacy, because I really hate it when like cis people write like trans stories and kind of exploit it in a way that's not authentic. And of course, like having a trigger warning, I think is really important as well. Because I mean, like Assassination Nation did that. But I was like, watching like Halloween Kills, and they had, I won't spoil it, but like a death, and I think probably should have done that. As for starting out, I think just like making it with the resources you have. Like I could have waited till I had like full funding and everything, but there's no point waiting. Like I wanted to tell a story, and I could tell a story with what I had, and I'm really proud of the film that I made. So yeah, I think just like making something, whether it's writing the script and finishing that, or like telling it as a narrative, I think just putting your work out there is really important.
Yeah, shoot the shot.
Completely. Yeah. What we say is do it afraid, right? Like even if you're like really worried and it's not perfect, right? Like it's not ever going to be exactly as you imagine, right? But it's going to be something, and you don't have like, you won't even know like the impact that it might have on, a person in that way. Yeah, I would say like we've gotten to be very appreciative of certain content that is being made by people that are younger than us, and just like being able to like tell these stories. And there's like this environment that we just want to keep going, where people are like, I want to feel comfortable. I want everyone else to feel comfortable and safe, and like to be able to tell their stories. And for the people who've been doing it for forever to step aside. Like we're like done with those stories. We're done with that. We want more. And there's so many more of us out here. One of my questions, and then I'll pass it over to you, Kat, was just like, what was your favorite scene to like, either because it was really fun to shoot, or it was like for whatever reason, like what was your favorite scene in the film?
I think it's like I had the most fun doing the drag sequences, because I mean they were all like rehearsed, so my direction was pretty much nothing. I could just watch the scenes, and being filmed, it's just really amazing to see like just the talent, because I mean I can't really get into a lot of drag shows anyway, being underage, so it was just kind of really cool to see that, especially having like such an old and like important performer like from the Legos who's played such a part in like historical, like just everything here. So I was like, that's pretty amazing. And I mean, pretty fun throughout the whole shoot. I really liked shooting like the drag cameo bit with et cetera from Drag Race Australia. That was really cool as well when we did that, working in like in an hour tops, because they just flew in for a performance, and I was like, we can do it. Yeah, I mean, it's just pretty fun in general.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's a very shoot your shot type of film. Like, why not? Why reach out? Like, and it's
and it worked out,
Yeah.
People showed up.
I'm sure it means a lot that like they saw the value in your work and were like, yeah, I'm gonna make this happen. I'm gonna show up. And I'm sure they were like flattered as well, and probably feel similarly to the way we do of like, yes, let's make this so that others can make things just like it, right? Kat, any questions?
Yeah. Well, we had just recently talked about like Melanie Martinez's K-12, and we had mentioned like just young people energy, and how like we wish the people that existed today existed when we were growing up, because we didn't see ourselves seen and heard in a lot of films. And I just think it's so great that this film exists and can like exist for people who are like growing up and don't have like the words for what they're experiencing. Like I know when I was growing up, I had no idea how to identify myself other than like the very patriarchal, gross times that we were living within. And I really like always wished like we had these role models that like, or just like any kind of representation that gave me any kind of idea to like guide me towards figuring out who the heck I was. So I just think it's so great that this exists. And I hope that like it continues to create spaces. And just thank you for creating it. And hopefully you make a bunch of other things, and there will be millions of other people who make other great things. And that all the other stories that suck go away.
Yeah. I ditto that, and just like thanking you for making this film. And it's not a lecture, right? It's not like we're telling you what to do. It's just like, oh, this is just a cool vampire story that just happens to have like queer representation and it has like amazing performances, but it's not like no one's going to go in there and be like, I don't want to see this. Like, it's just genuinely also a really fun vampire time. Like, you just also get to have fun with vampires. I just wanted you to share with our listeners and viewers where they can find you, if you have a website or anything like that, so people can kind of keep up with the work that you're putting out there and support you in that way.
I don't really have a website yet. I guess I just have Instagram, which is just like Alice Maio Mackay or One Man Productions. And like I have a Facebook page, but I'm probably not the most active on social media. But yeah, I mean, you can see the film like from Salem Digital Fest and from a couple of days time till like 31st, and then we premiere in London, I think at like the Soho in December festival, and then sorting distribution out now, which is fun. Yeah.
That's so exciting. Yes. Yeah. I wish you all the luck. Like, I honestly, it was a real treat watching your film, and I look forward to what you create next, and to all the futures productions, and
now I have to watch the shorts
support.
too.
Yes.
I didn't know they existed.
Yeah, put them on our list. Yeah, definitely. And definitely let us know, when you're working on something else. We'd love to support and to share with our listeners and viewers, so that they can also watch it and appreciate that. But yeah, any last thoughts, Kat?
No, I think that's everything. I don't know why I whispered it, but that's what.
Yeah. So thank you for taking the time out. I know it was like, we're different worlds so far, but thankfully, because like one of the very few silver linings of this pandemic is that we have been able to really get adjusted to these virtual tools that allow us to connect with people that maybe we wouldn't have been able to. So thank you for working it out with us and taking the time so that we can talk across the world at the same time. And if you can, please check out viewers and listeners, So Vam at the Salem Horror Fest. Just take some time out of your day. Like, you're going to really enjoy it. We made a point not to spoil things, like to get too into it, because it's really just like a trip. It's super fun, and you'll enjoy it. I highly recommend, and definitely check out what Alice is doing in the future, because I think it's really cool. There's gonna be a lot of great stuff.
Yeah. And once you figure out distribution, we'll figure out how to tell people to go watch.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Kat.
Yeah. Don't get married.
Leave your kids.